So let's go ahead and set the block type attribute. Let's type another for loop for point in geo.points, colon. If the point dot number, so the number of the point, is in CBD group, we're going to set the attribute on that point. And we're going to point.set attribute value. Again, open and close the brackets, and we want to set the block type attribute, and this is an attribute that we've just created, right? So we've got block type, this is what we're setting, and here we've done block type is add attribute. So the only reason we can now set it is because we first created it, and that's the same with color. The only reason we can set it in the code is because we've had to add it in the code first. If you forget these two lines, that won't work. Right, so the code just failed because I haven't finished the line of code yet. We're going to set the block type to commercial if it's in the CBD group, right? Central Business District should be commercial. And now you should see that everything pops up back because the code is now again correct. Now with an if loop, you can create multiple if statements in one. So instead of if done, you can say if point number is in CBD group, set this, else if it's not, do that. So what we're going to do at the same level of indentation of the if statement is we're going to go elif. Right? You can also say this, else if, but this is just a shorthand version of it. Else if point.number not in CBD group, then we're going to set the attribute value to something else. So point.set attribute value, pay attention to the camel case syntax. We're going to set the same attribute type, right? Or the block type attribute is what we're setting. For the CBD buildings or the commercial buildings, we set it to commercial. But for the ones that are not, we're going to set it to houses. In this case, it's easy because we've only got two types of buildings. Normally, if you would have more varieties, you can do another elif block in here. But in our case, we're just going to say else. So if neither of the above apply, we're going to pass. And what the pass statement does is it does nothing. So if neither of the conditions apply, it will basically just ignore that point. All right, so let's recap the code because it's fairly important that you get it right. So we know what we want to do with the CBD blocks and with the house blocks. So later when we fill the city blocks, we want to be able to say, if you're this type of block, use commercial buildings. If you're the house type of block, only use houses to scatter on them. So for that, we need to be able to identify which ones are which. So we've added a block type attribute and a point color attribute to our geometry so that we can later use these attributes to do what we want. Then what we need to do is the group that we've formed, right? We need to fetch that. So we need to call the geometry and pull in that group into our code. And we've set point groups as a variable, and we've wired up our point groups into it. So geo.pointGroups fetches the point groups from the geometry we have. If we would have 5 point groups or 6, point groups would now contain all of these groups. So in this case, what we want to do later is if the group name is equal to this one, right? We're looking for the CBD group, then do this. Right, so we create the list for the CBD group, and then we can say, we can call the point groups variable, which we've created here, and we can say for every group in point groups, if your group name is CBD group, then for each point in that group, set the color to red and put the point number in the group. Then what we do is we're going to set the attribute of block type. So what we do is for each point in geo.points, geo.points fetches all the points. Then we can say if the point number from the geo is in CBD group, so only if we've stored it in this list with this code, then set your attribute value of block type to commercial. Then we say if that's not the case, so if your point number is not in the CBD group, you're not commercial. And in this case, because we've only got 2 types, that means your houses. And if none of these match, just pass. This is just a little security line that I sometimes pass into my code. You could even omit it in this case, but it's just good measure.